Very good to see all of you, and I'm glad to be able to kick off our in-person gathering. Woohoo! All right.
You spread out a little more.
Yeah. Spread out. Spread out.
I am only because I'm drinking.
You have another one?
So, how are we all doing so far? I can see that, well, you guys are, surviving. I think you guys are looking good. Looking good. Yeah. Yep. And so I want to let us know that the Y is actually, they have been open, semi-open Monday to Saturday. But Sunday, they have been closed. And they actually have to hire a staff so that we can come in and use this facility. So, so they actually have to hire a staff. They had difficulty looking for one, but eventually they found one so that I don't have to be trained to open and lock up the Y. So that's what they have done for us, and I'm really appreciative for that. So they're going to be fully open starting tomorrow, but still it's Monday to Saturday. So Sunday is really just they're doing us a great favor.
Should we meet upstairs at church to save them from having to do that?
Yeah, we could do that.
No, because the Chinese side needs to use the Y as well. So yeah. So this is going to be really low tech today, and I think it's good. Low tech is good. So today's lesson is all about breaking barriers, right? Breaking barriers. We're going to be looking on your handout. You will find a Bible passage taken from Mark, and behind it there is a map. Okay, so we're going to be using those handouts. Hey, let us begin by word of prayer. Oh, you know what? Let's wait for the people who are a little late coming in. Their chairs behind.
Good morning, Wes. Good morning, Cheryl.
Let us open with the word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we come before you to give you thanks for giving us this opportunity to meet in this way after many months of isolation. And Lord, we acknowledge your providence. We acknowledge the generosity of many people, including the Y, that has made this possible. And so, Lord, help us learn, help us open ourselves, and help us just offer up our insights without reservation. Give you thanks and pray all this in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. Jennifer, please come in. Nhập đi lấy, nhập đi.
No, is that next?
So, we are using, we are actually reusing the curriculum that we used before, okay, before the pandemic. So, I'd like to begin by just letting us speak about the various barriers that you encounter on a daily basis, regular basis, right? It could be either physical or relational barriers, and including those that exist in a congregational church building. So just kind of just throw out a few things.
Yeah. That's good.
Language.
Big one.
Financial.
Cultural?
What?
Social.
Cultural.
Leave it off.
I tell my family members this is the wax. The cleanup. Anything else?
Theological.
Theological.
Political.
Age.
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 Generation?
Energy.
I don't know the right way to say it. Acceptance.
Inclusion.
Thank you, inclusion. That's better. I like that.
Geography. Health.
That's a lot.
Morals or morals? Politics?
That's already mentioned.
Did we mention? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of barriers that we encounter regularly on a daily basis, and even on the first day of the week, when you come to church. So all these barriers today, we want to look at how Jesus and how those people whom he encountered break barriers, cross over barriers, and I pray that is also something that we can learn from and respond. Okay, so I'd like for us to first let's each look at our Bible passage, right? It's taken from the Gospel of Mark, and it's also one of them is actually a very familiar story. I'd like for us to take turns to read. Shall we do that? Let's do it the old-fashioned way. One person read one verse, starting from Victor and go this way.
From there he set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there. Yet he could not escape notice.
But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and bowed down at his feet.
Now the woman was a Gentile, a Syro-Phoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter.
He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs."
But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs."
Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter."
So she went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon gone.
Continue.
Then he returned from the region of Tyre and went by way of Sidon to of Galilee, in the region of the
Decapolis. Yeah, it's okay.
They brought to him a deaf man who had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to lay his hand on him.
He took him aside in private, away from the crowd, and put his fingers into his ears, and he spat and touched his tongue.
Then looking up to the heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened.
And immediately his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly.
Then Jesus ordered them to tell no one, but the more he ordered them, the more zealously they proclaimed it.
They were astounded beyond measure, saying, "He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak."
Wow, isn't that
Exactly.
went one round, right?
That's amazing.
and I printed 15 copies, right? How many?
15.
15 copies,
Including you.
and Barbara was telling me that, hey, she's praying for 8 people when she on her way here, but obviously God is good. God is good. Okay, so now, first thing I want you guys to notice, all right, is that is verse 24, all right? From there, he set out and went away to the region of Tyre. All right, so this is geography. All right, and also at verse 31. Right, so after the incident with the Syrophoenician woman, Jesus then went on a trip again. And verse 21 it says, "Then he returned from the region of Tyre and went by way of Sidon towards the Sea of Galilee, in the region of the Decapolis." So now, turn over to the next page and you see a map with you, right? Can you locate Tyre? It's right on top, right? You see that? So that is in the region of Phoenicia. Okay, you see that, right? So the story of the Syrophoenician woman took place at Tyre, all right? After that, you notice, right? If you read verse 31, what was in that statement, in that verse? What was Jesus' final destination?
Sea of Galilee.
Sea of Galilee, right? But it says that he went by way of Sidon, right? So now take a look at the map. Can you locate Sidon?
North of Tyre.
It's even further north, right? So Jesus was making a what? A big detour, a loop, right? I mean, he could have just gone from Tyre straight to, go south, right? Diagonally, right? Maybe cut across Capernaum, and he would have arrived at Sea of Galilee, right? But he went up before he came south, right? So let me point this out to you, right? Now, you look at Galilee and Samaria and Judea. You see that? Okay? Identify these 3 regions, Galilee, Samaria, and Judea. And these are places where the Jewish people predominates. Okay? Now, areas such as Phoenicia, Syria, Abilene, Tetrarchy of Philip, and then Decapolis, these are where the Gentiles predominant. So these areas are where Gentiles are. So what do you think Jesus is doing?
Talking to both.
Talking to both, right? In fact, in our Bible passage today, he was interacting mostly with Gentiles, right? And that's where barriers exist. That's where barriers exist. All right. Now, looking at the first story, right? His interaction with the Syrophoenician woman. Again, it's very clearly stated that she is a Gentile. Okay. What kind of barriers are we talking about? Imagine Jesus, right, entering entering a house, right, and encountering a Gentile woman. What do you think could be barriers?
Well, the Jews would say they were unclean.
Okay, so one person at a time. Raise your hand. Diana?
Well, the Jews would consider Gentiles unclean.
Right. So there is that aspect of, I say theological. This is a theological issue, right? They consider them unclean. Good. What else?
She was a woman.
She's a woman. So a man and a woman in those days is not supposed to be interacting and not supposed to be alone in the house. They should not be talking, period, right? So this is partly cultural, partly theological, right?
Lower status?
Status, I think that's great. I think that's some, status too, right? Anything else?
She may have been a widow or not have a husband to support her.
Mm-hmm. So she encounters all kinds of barriers as a person. Right? Okay. There's one more barrier, which is missional. Okay. And this is so the mission from the mission perspective is that in those days, Jesus' people do not think that they want to have anything to do with the Gentiles, partly because they don't want to preach to let them know God. They don't want to reach out to them. They have nothing to do with their religion, so it's also missional. Okay. All right. So all kinds of barriers. So I want us to think about this. All right. I want us to think about this. There's a question here. It says, now, Alan Fall, come on in. I want us to kind of share, okay, what surprises you about Jesus' response to the Syrophoenician woman?
Say that again, please.
What surprises you about Jesus' response to the woman?
Well, I think it's the fact that she even responded to him. That she responded to Jesus when he said that, what was it? It's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs, which means,
That she actually kind of like,
because, he's saying that, my ministry is only for a certain group of people, and we don't want to give it to the dogs, which is referring to the Gentiles.
Yeah.
So, but then she comes right back at him.
yes.
And many people,
That
people would not do that.
Right. So that woman is obviously very brave and all that. But what about Jesus said in the first place, right? Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. How do you react to this statement? Are you surprised? Are you astounded? Are you shocked?
For the people he was trying to reach, the Jews, it's not surprising. That's his field. That's the field he's trying to reach out to. And so he's justifying why he should do what he's doing.
Right. He is, yeah, right. So I mean, people have been wondering and trying to explain Jesus' response, right? Because this is very atypical of Jesus, because you read the entire Gospel of Mark, right? Jesus, in fact, always reaches out to those who are weak. He always reaches out to the widowed and also to the children. And he is always on the side of those who are weak, who cannot protect themselves. Jesus, at the end of of all the 4 Gospels, what he say? Go out and preach the gospel to all the nations, right? And baptizing them in the name of the Father and teaching them to obey all that I've taught you guys. So why is he, saying such things? First of all, rejecting the Syrophoenician women, and even saying, hey, the food, we're going to throw it to the dogs. And we want to throw it to the dogs and not to you, right? So what is going on here? Some people try to explain that, hey, the dog is not it's not derogatory. When Jesus said that, he meant small dogs, right? Which I don't buy. Okay, I believe that Jesus' intention, what Jesus was doing, he was actually echoing the sentiments of his people at that time. He is echoing his sentiments that, okay, hey, we're not supposed to, help you guys. We're not supposed to, preach the message of our God to you. We're not supposed to, receive you into our faith community. Right? So Jesus is actually echoing the people, echoing the sentiments and voices of his contemporaries. And because he wants to show people how faithful, how bold Gentile people can be.
So is the analogy here that he's saying that the children are the Jews and the dogs are the Gentiles? And she's saying, hey, even we want some of your crumbs sometimes.
Yes. No. Yeah.
Mixed metaphor.
It's not a nice thing to say. I do not believe Jesus is actually capable of saying that, because it's just so inconsistent with his behaviors before and even after. Okay? So therefore, I believe that he's echoing what the people are saying.
Or Testament.
Right. And so what about, how did the woman challenge the barriers?
She talked back to him.
She talked back to him, right? Yes?
The fact that she even approached him.
The fact that she even approached him? Yes. Yes. What do you think motivated her?
Her
Daughter. Right? Yeah.
But she had to have a belief that he could actually help her.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some openness to believing.
Yes. And Jesus, by that time, by chapter 7, has already quite a reputation. He started, his ministry, and he had quite a following. So his reputation kind of preceded him by that time, right? I imagine, sort of, if I were in a woman's, position, and imagine her being a parent, I think she's just totally sort of, she is desperate, wanting to save her daughter, right? And so she's just kind of, put herself in a very vulnerable position. She doesn't care, right? She doesn't even know what Jesus might do, right? She knows that, Jews and Gentiles are not supposed to have anything to do with one another. She knows that at that time, people are very sort of close-minded about religion. She knows that she's aware of all these cultural barriers, but she just doesn't care anymore, right? I say that's faith. I say that, it's like this. She's just totally open to all kind of possibilities, because she's tried all kinds of ways, and Jesus is like the last resort.
Can I ask you a question, Sebastian?
Please.
Thinking about this, a question that's not answered in here is she going to Jesus first, or is she going to Jesus as a last-ditch effort? And you can't tell.
I can tell. Yeah, right. I don't know.
Well, I think this explains that, you know, a mother would put herself at risk for the child.
Yes! You're trying to tell my ghost all the time.
What did she say?
The mother will always put.
A
No,
mother
what's
will
the
always put
child?
herself at risk for her child.
If only they know. Yeah. Yes. Right. I mean, it's just that. So, you know, so the reason I surmise that it was not her first attempt is that, you know, I mean, I think the daughter has been sick for quite a while, right? And it's not like Jesus, you know, Jesus' itinerary. She doesn't know, right? So I'm sure. So I'm thinking that she must have tried all kinds of ways, tried, you know, all kinds of, demon, what do they call it, exorcist or whatever, right? And then Jesus came along. Oh, Jesus is in town. I better hurry. I better go. Right? And she's just put herself in a very, yeah, she's desperate and also a very humiliating position, right? She's begging someone, a man, right, to have mercy. And what did Jesus do? What did Jesus do?
He cured her. Cast the spirit out of her daughter.
For saying that you may go, the demon has left your daughter, right? So does Jesus care about conventional customs? Does Jesus care about what the kind of theology that his contemporary has? Does he care about the theology that his religious leaders hold on to?
Well, he was not conventional anyway. And he did things that were against the Pharisees didn't agree with. He entered into territories that was not normally common for people of his kind to go into. And it's all, I think, because, you know, either to illustrate, you know, his own, well, I don't want to use the word power, but his influence. And he had a message to give. And so what better way than to do something like this?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for saying that. You know, I want to sort of, you know, elaborate as to piggyback on the word conventional, right? Jesus is not conventional, right? But I don't think that he is unconventional for the sake of just being unconventional. He appears to be unconventional because he truly goes to the heart of God. He truly has that understanding. He sees through all the fakeness, all the hypocrisy of the religious institution, which usually happens when, over time, right? We start off. It's like a church, you know. When we start off, we have a very clear sense of mission. That's how churches grew. Right? We have a very clear sense of a mission, and that's how we grow. And after that, right, because we are so growing so quickly, you know, we begin to then try to maintain, right? We need to maintain the institution, and that's so. Therefore, we have all kinds of policy, which is great because that it will enable the church to grow even, right? But then after some time, we forget about why these policies are for, right? Because the policies and whatever rules and regulations is only good for that particular time and that particular situation, right? And it helped. But then, of course, things change, circumstances change, and we continue to hold on to these policies and all that, even when they are not applicable anymore. Right? And people will be very reluctant to change that because when we know these policies, when we practice them, we become very powerful, and it will be hard to let go. Right? So this is what happens. Right? So Jesus appears to be unconventional because he was truly guided by God and just, wanting to do God's will and nothing else. Right? That's why he doesn't care. He says he was actually goading. In fact, I'm sure he knows the faith of this woman. He knows, and he's trying to, goad her to say things to show the people around that hey, who says we cannot preach the good news to a Gentile? They are ready. They are ready. Again, it just reminds me of churches that I've been involved with. When I came to this country, I was very involved with Taiwanese churches, Taiwanese Presbyterian churches, and they are a bunch of faithful Christians, but they have this thing, right, against Chinese, especially Chinese from mainland China. They always are suspicious of their faith. They always think that they are here at church because they are after something else. Which can be true, but not always, right? And of course, now look at the revival that's ongoing in China. Okay, so therefore, Jesus, broke barriers in this way, right? Now let's move on and look at the second passage. So he again is in Gentile region, and so therefore, what Mark is trying to tell us that hey, these people, the people who brought this person who's deaf and all that can speak, are Gentiles, are also Gentiles, right? And this time Jesus just did it. He did not, make it difficult, right, for people. He just say, be open, right? Because this man's ear was closed, his eyes, his tongue was closed. Once he, and he did, of course, put his fingers into his ears, spat and touch his tongue and all that, and make him, so to heal him, and he said, be open, right? And then this person is immediately saved. So now, so let's talk about the barriers first. What were the barriers that were existing in this kind of situation? In this particular situation? So in those days, a very unfortunate belief that people have is that when you are sick like that, right, born with a natural disease or whatever, impairment, it's because you are a sinner. Either that or your parents were sinners, right? So I'm trying to put myself in the position of this man. I'm thinking that is a double whammy, right? First, I'm already not well, right? And then secondly, right, people are saying that, hey, you deserve this because, you're a sinner, right? It's so, frustrating, right? Imagine in that situation, yeah, and a lot of times, so when I first found out that I had cancer, and I really appreciate people coming to talk to me about, hey, they try to show their concern and all that, and then inevitably they will say, oh, I actually watch my diet, I'm very careful with what I eat and all that, I should do that. So kind of made me feel like, oh man, okay, so I'm cancer, I deserve it because I'm not eating well, right? So yeah, it's a double whammy. So when Jesus said, be open to the person, right? He is obviously healing the person, right? He's saying that your ears are going to be open, your tongue is going to be open, you're going to be able to speak. What other meanings could he have implied when you hear be open? Be open. What kind of barrier is it trying to break?
Well, I think the message message here is that it's not just the deaf man. I think that's just symbolic of society around him, that they're not being open to Jesus. I think this is very symbolic of just society not being open to the message.
Yeah.
And so once he cured the deaf man and he was able to hear, he's saying to everyone else, if a deaf man can hear, certainly you can hear the message, and you have true hear. You do not have this disability.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. I mean, it is true. It is true that, you know, when we read the Bible, right, there are many layers of communication happening, right? The first layer is when Jesus is talking to the people, right? At that time, at that place, that's a conversation that is ongoing. There's also another conversation ongoing when the Bible is spoken, when the story is read to whoever is the church, right? The worshippers, people who have gathered in the first century, who are listening to this conversation that happened many years ago, right? There's that layer, and then there's of course right now, right? So therefore, when Jesus said, "Be open," I think it is like what Peter said, that Jesus is not just speaking to the person who needs healing. Jesus is speaking to all generations of people around here, right? And when he says be open, right? Be open. It can mean what? It can mean that we should be open to Jesus' good news, right? But what else? What else? Specifically in relation to the belief at that time.
Well, changing the idea that your ancestor, you're atoning for your ancestors' sins.
Yeah.
And that, you know, what other people did in the past should not affect your own life
Yes.
at this point.
Yes, be open to my insight, because Jesus has said, right, especially in the Gospel of Matthew, he says that you have heard that it was said, right? So he is referring to the Old Testament, right, the Bible that his people have read and grew up on, right? You have said that it was said this and this, but I say to you, right? Again, is he being unconventional? Yes. But he is really going to the root, to the spirit of the law. So we should also be
Is the deaf and mute man a Jew or a Gentile?
the Gentile. The Gentile.
Okay, because of where he's geographically from, it looks that way.
Most likely he's a Gentile. That's the point. That's why Mark would, you know, make sure he mentioned that, you know, that geography. Right? That, yeah. Right. And we see that Jesus is making the detour. So, so be open. So what can we be open to, you know, these days? At our church.
Traditions are good, but you don't always have to follow them.
What's that?
Traditions are good, but you don't necessarily have to follow them 100% of the time. And change is always good, although change is difficult.
And yeah, I totally agree with that. I'll kind of rephrase it a little bit. Traditions are good, but we must build on them. New things. Tradition has to evolve, right? Because if not, then it becomes stale. So we always have to ask ourselves, why did we do this in the first place? Right? Why do we have this particular program 20 years ago? Right? What is it for? Right? Then we say, oh, it's because we have this situation, you know, the church was in this particular location, and the community is like this and like that, and that's why we have that program. Then we ask ourselves, well, I mean, the point, the purpose is we want to preach the gospel, right? We want to reach out, we want to meet the needs of people. What are the needs now? Are the needs still the same? Right? I mean, what we're doing, you know, still efficient or still able for us to preach the gospel to them, right? So I think that's how we should always be evaluating what we do. Be open to the Spirit. Be open to the Spirit. Any other thoughts? Okay, if not, I'd like to break you guys up, form like a group of four. Groups of four. Okay. Right, we have about like 5 minutes or so. I want us to kind of break up into your groups and discuss these two questions, okay? So, yesterday was the 20th anniversary of 9/11, right? I'd like us to discuss what kind of barriers have there been between Christians and Muslims. And I can, go to the history, and it's crazy history, crazy animosity between two religions that preaches peace. And what can Christians do? Okay? And name one way you will challenge a barrier and show mercy this week. Okay, so let's break up into groups of four, maybe.